All right, it's a little past 8:30 here, and it's Tuesday, and we have a Legislative and Human Resources Committee to get started. So thanks for joining us today. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment? All right, seeing none. Our next item is approval of the minutes. Is there anyone with a motion to approve the minutes? Moved by Commissioner Burrow, support by Commissioner Kallman. Any questions or comments regarding? Any questions or comments regarding this agenda item? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is the medical examiner, and we have a performance measurement review. We have Dr. Cole with us today. Thanks for joining us.
All right, we'll jump into it. So let's see. So everyone's following, I guess, on your all's computer. Okay. So we'll go through these 5 steps here, and I do want to recognize Brittany Richardson, our office administrator. She is fairly new now and has put this presentation together with just a little bit of input from me, not much. So as far as the meat of the presentation, our staff, we have 8 medical examiner investigators who are contractors with Kent County, so they're not county employees. Most of you, or many of you, know this anyhow. And they are listed here. They come from a variety of backgrounds, a couple ex-law enforcement, and as you can see, a nurse, and a funeral director, actually. And so they come from all walks of life, all do a good job. Our administrative staff is Brittany and Sharon Smith, her assistant. And then we have a couple of contractors for body transport services, Carrier on Call, and they do an excellent job. And then our call center, which is where people call when they need a medical examiner, is Absolute Call Center. So again, stop me if anyone has questions along the way here. So our strategic goals, which are basically mandated by law, are to investigate and determine the cause and manner of death under the medical examiner law. Very briefly, this is all deaths resulting from accident, suicide, homicide, unexplained deaths, and deaths in custody, police custody, or though we don't have prisons here in Kent County, deaths at the jail, which do happen occasionally. And then we really, one of the big things and the main performance measure really is turnaround time, trying to do our work in a timely fashion. That's basically our strategic goals. Among our performance metrics are to complete our autopsies within 3 months. Now, you might say, well, what takes so darn long that we would even have that? Well, on an average situation, we do an autopsy that takes a couple of hours. That's the actual autopsy with the body. And then additionally, though, what we do is toxicology. That can take up to months. Most of the time, it's a few weeks. We have to look at tissue samples under the microscope. We may need additional information depending on the case. So we're trying to track down people, and sometimes all over the country. And of course, sometimes identification of a body is a major issue. So again, that can take extensive effort and time as well. But for the most part, I'd say most of our autopsies are completed within 2 months or less. And then there are the metrics for the last 3 years. So again, if there are any questions or anybody's gotten complaints from constituents about why this autopsy take so long, those are the reasons, but I'm always glad to address individual cases if there are questions. So another thing is, the way the system works is, so we have these investigators. Actually, one thing I didn't mention, I don't think it's on here exactly. So I'm the chief ME, David Start is the deputy chief medical examiner. He also takes cases. He's also one of our investigators. So he wasn't listed there as such, but because he wears several hats. But anyway, so our investigators, once they're called by, usually it's police or a hospital or medical facility where people die. And so they take down information, they go to the scene if it's indicated to do so, and then they make a report. Usually, well actually, it's on a template, it's like 9 pages, but as far as the really important information, it's about 3 or 4 pages generally. But that includes a narrative of what happened and how we decided to handle the case, whether it's an autopsy or not, and what we finally determined to be the cause and the manner of death. So those reports, we want to have all of them completed within 2 months. Again, the vast majority of them are a couple or 3 days, but they can get very complex, the information, or we may need more and more information, and so that's why we have the 2-month period, and we're essentially at 100%. There still are a few cases. There was one we had, an unidentified person. He'd had dental work. You could tell that. He was badly decomposed, extremely badly. So, we didn't have any family. We worked with the Grand Rapids Police. Finally, our investigator, Elizabeth Brown, found that this guy had been released from the Thumb Correctional Facility, had some dental work there. We got dental records from there after months. The state does not move fast. So we finally got the dental records, and we couldn't get 100% identification from those, but we could not exclude him. And so we were finally able to do the best we could to get him identified. But that took, I think that took 3 months. Those are the outliers that can, but that's why we have to take as much time as we do to make sure we complete it. Okay. Oh, all right. So we want to complete 95%, at least 95% of our scene investigations within an hour of being notified. So most of the time we don't have a problem with this. And of course we want to have that turnaround time because we're tying up police officers. There may be family members that are there, and we want to get the death worked on one way or the other. We either would bring the body into the current facility at Blodgett, or sometimes if it's an expected death and there's nothing suspicious, we can release the body directly to a funeral home. But either way, we want to get the body able to be released so people are not tied up. And there are occasions when that takes a little longer, but for the most part, we can get that accomplished. So our accomplishments, we are one of, I think it's 33 or 34 medical examiner offices in the country that are certified by an inspection by the National Association of Medical Examiners. So there are a number of criteria that we have to fit. The one thing I will say that they've let us slide a little on, we are still certified, but we probably aren't up to snuff on their requirements for facilities. But we are currently certified, and they also look at the quality of the investigations and the reports and that sort of thing. We've worked for many years with Gift of Life Michigan out of Ann Arbor, and tried to facilitate post-mortem harvest of tissues, and they are very thorough in their harvesting, but I'm hopeful that they help a lot of people. And we also facilitate in relatively few cases where somebody has been severely injured, but they're still on life support, and they could use a heart, liver, lungs, kidneys. We, of course, always are able to, whatever you need, and we'll take care of the rest in terms of certifying the death. We do collaborate with law enforcement and public health. I would say, if anything, what our office does is public health related, really, more than law enforcement, although both are key components of what we do. And so in doing our reports and sharing our data, we work with, one of the hot areas, of course, is drug overdose and drug abuse situations. And we try to do a good job of sharing our information with agencies that need that, including law enforcement and public health. We did have one case, I think I may have mentioned this last year, as far as public health, where a young girl died of an infection, an intestinal infection, and other family members had had a similar infection but didn't die. But we were able to submit specimens to the state health department for testing on an act organism and the toxin that it was producing that caused this child's death. So looking ahead, we want to really continue the work that we've done as far as trying to be a resource for families, provide them information, actually provide them death certificates. That's one thing, obviously, when someone dies that needs to be filed so that arrangements and estate issues can be taken care of. We try to be available to talk to families if they have questions. Not every family does. Most of them, I don't think, do, because they kind of understand what happened. But if they do have questions about the death and the possible effects on other family members and so on, then we try to provide that. Innovation, we are hopeful we can get a new morgue facility, and our current one is really not very good, and so I don't want to go spend a lot of time on that right now, but I'd say that's our main hoped for innovation. And then community impact, I've sort of already touched on this. So looking at causes of death, what kinds of drugs, in this case mainly fentanyl, as far as a drug causing overdose deaths, and but other threats to public health, as I mentioned, infectious diseases. We did actually also have a case of a woman who had an unusual type of tuberculosis, and that died, and that has been reported all the way to the Centers for Disease. Well, I guess that's the dog and pony show. If anyone has questions or comments, I guess now would be a real good time.
Yeah. Any questions for Dr. Cole? Commissioner Legrand.
Morning. I'm wondering, the contractor providers that you have, are they just doing scene investigations, or are they actually doing autopsies?
Oh, okay. So I'll repeat the question for clarity. So the contractors that were listed, do they do only scenes? They're called medical examiner investigators. Do they do only scene work, or do they assist with autopsies? For the most part, this applies to all but one of them, all they do are scene investigations. We have there's one woman, Elizabeth Brown. She's a scene investigator. She's also an autopsy assistant. So she wears two hats, but there's really no conflict. So for the most part, if we talk about medical examiner investigators, we're talking people who do the scenes, but they don't always go to the scenes if it's not indicated. Sometimes they can handle cases on the phone. But anyway, they're the investigators.
Okay, and then just one follow-up, if
Sure.
I may. And how often are you calling someone out, say, in an average week, if you have average weeks?
Well, let's see. I would say, okay, I'm just trying to think of the breakdown. We have about 1,450 to 1,500 cases a year. It's been going up, total cases that are called in. Of those, probably a third are what we call declines. It turns out somebody calls for a medical examiner, we get the information, it's really not a medical examiner case, but we still have to spend time on it. So that's, obviously, they wouldn't go out on those. Of the other ones, I would say perhaps a third, so maybe 400 to 500 cases, our investigators will actually go to the scene. That's an estimate.
Great, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Commissioner Hennessy.
Good morning.
Hello.
It's always nice to hear your reports. Are there multi-county dimensions to the work that you're doing? Are we working with other counties?
Okay,
Or
so,
is that a possibility if we get new offices?
well, okay, that's a compound question, so I'll
Yes.
have to break it down.
It is.
So we don't, by law, don't work with other counties or by contract. Now, the way it happens is that probably around the state, 15 or 20 counties other than Kent. Of course, Kent, we have a contract, so all the Kent cases have to go to Blodgett. But another 15 or so counties will use us because they don't have a forensic pathologist. And so what we do for them is the autopsy, period. We don't do any death investigation or anything like that. So that's the way it is now. So I would say we do maybe 100 out-of-county, what we call them, out-of-county autopsies per year. That is for other counties. Interestingly, the Upper Peninsula, I'm not sure how much this is going to affect this, and this isn't answering your question exactly, but you're making me think here. The Upper Peninsula, many of the cases, we've always done a few cases, even for the UP, if they, depending on the kind of case and the expertise that they wanted. But at Marquette, which is, I don't know what they call it, it was Marquette General Hospital, medium-sized hospital, about like Holland Community. They've always had a set of very good pathologists, and those people did a lot of the autopsies, even though they weren't forensically trained. They could get by, I guess I'd say. And they would actually consult us and perhaps other forensic pathologists if they had a question. Or they'd send the body here. But those people are not doing that anymore. They, as of about October, I think, they're not doing any kind of forensic medical examiner autopsies. So I don't know what's going to happen. They can't force us to take them, and right now we're not staffed. But that's really is a small indicator of a larger problem, which is present in Michigan and really in the whole country, which is there just aren't enough forensic pathologists. But anyway, back to your question. So could we partner with other counties? And my answer is yes. I mean, there's no law to prevent it. I think it's at the administrative level, and of course, Dave Stark, my partner, and I would want to be in on it just to kind of see what the workload and the support would be. But yeah, and I think it'd be a great idea. Right now, Kalamazoo, who has a fairly aggressive medical examiner, they do cases for Muskegon, which they've done for many years, and they do all the cases for Muskegon. They run the Muskegon Medical Examiner Office, and I know they do cases for Grand Traverse County and Leelanau, so they go right through Grand Rapids on their way to Kalamazoo. So, but that's the way it's been. It's been a hodgepodge like that for years. But yeah, I mean, the logical partner would be Ottawa County because they're a big county. Right now, many of their autopsies are done at Holland Community by non-forensically trained people, and they send us the babies and the homicides and the decomposed bodies. But they do the rest of them. So maybe sometime, perhaps sooner rather than later, we might want to send all their cases here, and that would provide a shared opportunity. But as well as some other smaller counties might want to also kick in.
But it's nice to hear about the growth opportunities within your area. Thank you.
Any other questions at all? I know Al has something he'd like to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention have had discussions with Dr. Cole about a potential new medical examiner facility, and virtually toured one in Texas that looks like a great model. Also, I think there are relationships with other counties that are well established. Doc mentioned Ottawa, where Dr. Start is actually the medical examiner for the county, and Dr. Cole is the deputy medical examiner. So some of those relationships already exist. Others have tried multi-county morgues, but it was way up north and it just didn't take. We are also looking at potential partnerships with other health institutions, medical school, that type of thing. And so I just wanted to assure Doc that a new medical examiner facility is not a dead issue.
Thanks. Good wording.
No pun intended.
If
All
we
right.
ever open a new one, we're gonna have a grand opening, and we're gonna have crocuses. Flowers, crocuses. Okay. We could go on all morning, Al and I, but I think probably real business that needs to be done. Is there anything else that I'm needed for at this point?
I just have one more question too.
Sure.
You mentioned the certification too with the National Association, and you said that the facilities maybe weren't up to par or up to snuff. What would bring those facilities up to par?
One of them is size. You need a certain, and I don't know the number, so I can't answer it specifically, but you need a certain amount of square footage for the number of autopsies that you do. And right now, we have 2 workstations in our morgue, and if we have a couple of homicides from different jurisdictions, we're going to have officers for each and evidence techs for each, and our own staff and our students. We usually have students that spend a month or 2 with us. So, so size is an issue. One that they dinged us on the last time, although it didn't prevent us from getting certified, is they feel that, or the organization, or the name, National Association of Medical Examiners, feels that there needs to be a covered or at least secure sally port where bodies come in and go out. Ours come right in off of Wealthy Street. You know, people could hypothetically be out in the street just kind of seeing the bodies moved in. So a more secure loading and unloading area. We're also spread out a lot. And again, I don't want to go into, I think now isn't the time probably to go into all the problems, but you know, we have our administrative offices in the health department over on Fuller. Then we got the morgue. That's in the basement, of course, most morgues are. And then our professional offices are on the 6th floor at the other end of the hospital, so just being spread out is a disadvantage and does allow for potential leakage of information or unauthorized, perhaps, acquisition of information just because we're so spread out and not in one confined space.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Cole? All right, seeing none, thank you so much for joining us today. Our next item on the agenda is from the Drain Commissioner's office, and I understand that he is currently en route, but not here yet. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which comes from the Health Department, and that is the appointment of the County Medical Examiner.
Action requested. Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to appoint Stephen Cole, M.D., as the County Medical Examiner for the term of January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2026. State law requires the Board of Commissioners of each county to appoint a County Medical Examiner for a 4-year term. Dr. Stephen Cole has worked in the county's medical examiner program since 1982, including serving as the Chief Deputy Medical Examiner and since October 2002, serving as the County Medical Examiner. Dr. Cole meets the requirements of the County Medical Examiner as provided for in state law and has agreed to continue to serve in this capacity. Consistent with the current arrangement, the county will contract with Michigan Pathology Specialist, PC, for Dr. Cole's time and expertise. Michigan Pathology Specialist, PC, also serves as a subcontractor of the county to provide autopsy services for the County Medical Examiner program. As permitted by state law, Dr. Cole will continue to provide autopsy and investigative services while serving as County Medical Examiner.
All right, thanks, Al. Is there a motion for this item?
So moved. Support.
Moved by Commissioner Teal, support by Commissioner Burrow. Any questions or comments? We had some really good questions earlier, so. All right, let's vote. All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, please say no. All right, motion passes. Thank you for your service. All right, next item on the agenda comes from the Department of Public Works, and we have some new position requests.
Recommend to the Board of Commissioners to add a Deputy Director, Maintenance Technician, Transfer Station Operator, and combine 2 open part-time positions to create 1 full-time Waste Reduction Educator position at the Department of Public Works, DPW. DPW leadership completed a strategic planning session in June and identified department reorganization as the top priority. The DPW organizational chart was last updated 10 years ago. To provide necessary support to managers, the department is requesting to add a deputy director to provide day-to-day oversight of operations and capital improvement plan projects. 2 vacant part-time positions, an account clerk 1 and a marketing and communications manager, are being combined to create a full-time waste reduction educator position, which will improve the department's ability to educate students and others in the community about the importance of recycling and other environmentally sound waste management practices. A transfer station operator is being added at the North Kent Transfer Station, and a maintenance technician is being added at the Kent County Recycling and Education Center to maintain efficient operations at those facilities. The proposed reorganization aligns staff resources with department business needs, provides for the continuity of operations and future succession planning, and will be funded within the operational budget.
Thanks, Al. Is there a motion for this item? Moved by Commissioner McLeod. Is there support? Support by Commissioner Legrand. Any questions or comments? We do have Dar here to answer any questions for us today. All right. Commissioner Hennessy.
Being that there are no other questions, I'll ask one. It seems a little unlikely to be putting an account clerk with the marketing communications person. Will that work well for you?
Thanks for joining us today, Dar.
Thanks, Chair Brevy, and good morning, Commissioners. It's really taking 2 positions that are vacant to create a 1 FTE position. So the person that would be hired into that position will certainly be suitable for the job. We're not taking an account clerk who's currently in a position and moving them into a new role. So it's 2 part-time open positions we're combining to make 1 full-time position so that we can post and hire for them.
Okay, it sounds like an unusual mix to be moving the communications and accounting together.
It was mainly when we moved to our new location, located on Wealthy, we had a couple of positions. For example, under contract, we used to staff the front desk, the reception area at the road commission. How that ever became a thing, it was a thing, and that's what we inherited. So prior to moving, the road commission made a decision that they were no longer going to staff that front desk. So we went through a process of eliminating that position, and then to be able to cover that, we had a time and a half, right? We had 1 full-time position and then a part-time position. So that has been open since we moved. So we're just taking that position that's open, combining it with another open position. Instead of having 2 part-time, we'll have 1 full-time. It's difficult to hire part-time, and we see it as a longer-term strategy to have a full-time person in place.
Just to add one more thing, I am hearing about, from parents about their school groups that are really working on education, and it's really interesting that you're going to have an educator there at the recycling center. I mean, I think that that's a really interesting way to be working with our youth and to educate them on conservation issues into the future.
We actually have 2 educators with this added person. Pre-pandemic, we had about 6,000 students and residents coming through for tours at the recycling center. We also provide tours at the waste energy facility and the landfill to give them perspective on how they're recycling and where their trash goes. One of our educators actually works very closely with a number of school districts and helps develop curriculum around recycling and waste reduction. So between these 2 positions, we'll provide tours and assistance to teachers throughout Kent County and actually throughout West Michigan as they think about curriculum for their students. So we think it's a good investment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Legrand.
Thank you. It says in your last note that this will all be funded within the operational budget, so you're not asking for more money with this request, just approving the positions? Would that
Correct.
be
So we operate
correct?
an enterprise operation, and the fees that we charge for the services that we offer cover our operational costs, and we can cover that within our operations budget.
Okay, because my question was, it seemed like adding a deputy director and a full-time rather than 2 part-times? And, adding, sounds like you're just adding cost, but that is not a concern?
It's not a concern. So when I became director, I don't know, I'm getting longer in the tooth here, 7 years ago, almost 8, we made a decision at that time. We had several staff positions in administration and felt like we didn't have enough support out in the field. So we took those positions and actually repurposed them and put them out into the field. We added a supervisor at the North Kent Transfer Station. We added a supervisor at the South Kent landfill. And that's really worked well for us because we were a little lean out in the field. Transactions. For example, North Kent Transfer Station, I think we did 67,000 customer transactions last year, and it only continues to grow. When we went through our when we considered reorganization, and in fact, Al walked us through a strategic planning session in June, and we had had a number of conversations with Chair Breevy on the Board of Public Works about ensuring that as we grow and as we transition, that we had the right staff in place for the future. So that's why we thought it would be best to make that decision now. We do have the operational budget to support it. We're always setting dollars aside for future construction, like for North Kent Transfer Station and other capital refurbishment along with operations. So we're just moving a little money within the budget, but it's certainly funded within our enterprise fund.
I have one follow-up question as well. The educator position, I'm curious, does that mostly happen at the recycling facility or in classrooms, or do you actually go out and educate, say, businesses about their waste or anything like that? Do you get in the community in different ways like that?
We actually do it a number of different ways. For example, like the National Night Out and other events. Where we're invited or where we have an opportunity to be alongside, like the City of Grand Rapids or the Health Department or other opportunities, we're there. We do provide in-classroom. We provide tours of the recycling center. We have open hours on Monday afternoons where either stay-at-home moms or those that might have teaching their kids at home, homeschool, that they can come in the afternoons on Monday. We do provide tours, so we actually, the schools will bring school buses in, they'll tour at the recycling center, and then our educators will go with the buses and actually provide tours of the recycling or of the South Kent landfill. So it's a combination of things. And then during the pandemic, we really stepped up our virtual programs so that students for a couple of years really didn't have access to our facility. So we've changed it up quite a bit, and we offer it in many ways. There's just one or two of them, so they're stretched, and we have to kind of pick and choose, but we try to cover everything where we're requested to.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Dar? Seeing none, we have a motion before us, adding a couple positions here. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. Motion passes. All right, it looks like our next item on the agenda will be the Drain Commissioner, Ken Yunker, with his performance measurement review. We were having a little bit of trouble with the mics, and I think the feedback that we were getting up here was probably from the computer up there. And it looks like it shut off, but maybe Kaylee can help us solve that problem.
I'm very technical challenge, so.
I don't know if the computer.
My luck, it probably just blew up. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, we'll try to restart it.
Oh, yeah, my stick people.
Laptop issue too.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us this morning, Commissioner Yunker.
Yeah, Madam Chair, you caught me when you texted me. I was ready to walk a drain in Caledonia. So you caught me in time. So, as you all know, I'm Ken Yunker, the Drain Commissioner, and I will go over, yeah, that's your computer. Well, it's trying to move the slide forward and it won't move it.
Test. Okay. Okay. So if I unplug that, guys won't be able to see it, but I don't know. Okay. So you can still view it this way.
But it'll work.
Yep.
Because I'll need. All right, so this is my alignment with board priorities, department strategic goals, key performance metrics, significant accomplishments, key collaborations, and a look ahead. And I will make this as fast as I can. Performance dashboard, strategic alignment. We have our department strategic goals is goal 1, to administer the Public Act, the Drain Code, to establish maintenance and establishing of drains in Kent County. That's our number 1 goal and priority. Number 2 is to administer the Subdivision Act for stormwater management, which is secondary in our role amongst the county. And what that means is every time there's a new plat, we review it in our office to make sure all the grades and the drain ponds, retention ponds, are all up to code and everything is kosher. A lot of developers today are no longer doing plats. We have very few of those coming through. They're going into condos, associations, neighborhood associations, where they become their own government agency, and the roads and all the stormwater is the homeowner's responsibility, and they have the authority to assess each other through their association to pay for maintenance on the infrastructure. The problem is, they don't do it. We get the calls, we get the complaints. I can't touch them because I have no legal authority or no way to recoup the costs that would be incurred. So then they get angry because I'm scooting my responsibility. Sometimes you just can't win. But that's what tends to be happening, because when they do those condos, those developers, they get to sidestep a lot of state regulation. It's easier for them. So that tends to be the trend in Kent County right now. Goal 3 is to administer the Legal Lake Level Act. That is always a very contentious issue in Kent County. Lake people all want it their way, but when we have a court order to establish a lake level, it kind of makes things not real flexible. We have several of them right now that we're working on to establish lake level. We have one, they want to reset the lake level and put in an outlet. So that gets to be a very time-consuming and expensive process. We did run into a real stickler on this one this year. The Supreme Court ruled that when the lake level's established, we have to keep that lake level at that established lake level. With the language that has been put into these lake levels in the past, it was we shall keep these lake levels at this level, whatever the court has ruled. So now the Supreme Court is holding us to that. But when it rains hard, we can't because the water goes up and some of these lakes don't have an outlet. So this is still moving into a progress. We are going through all our lake levels right now. We're going to go to court on every one of them and reword the language on them so we have flexibility. Otherwise, we're going to be in court every time we get a high or a dry summer where that lake drops. And the associations hold us accountable, which we can't meet. If we don't have a pump to pump the lake up, we're in trouble. And I don't know how that's going to be playing out, but we're in the process of rewriting all our language, and we'll go to court on every one of our lake levels to reestablish the language on those. So I don't end up in court on every lake level. Key performance metrics. The department goal we administrate the drain code. We do meet all our soil erosion requirements. We are certified, our offices, to manage our own erosion control. So we do our own, on all our projects, we have our erosion permitting through our office. And then we have to fill out our reports to Eagle every year. And we have 100% going on that, which is required and should be expected from our office. And our our drain co-objective is inter-county drain boards. I have about a dozen or so of the inter-county drain boards where I work with our neighboring counties on drains that flow from one county to the other. We've been quite active. In 22 we had 31, 21, 27. And in 2020, we had 19, so you can see that that activity has picked up. And that is due to getting on top asset management on all our drains. So even our inter-county drains, we're getting on top of and getting those into shape. Another objective is our complaints. I like to call them inspection requests. And those are dealt with within 90 days. I have a policy that our office keeps. We get a call in from a constituent and we respond in 24 hours. We can't always get an answer, but at least we can acknowledge to them that we receive their call and we respond to them. And most of our requests upon inspection, if there's work to be done, we get them resolved within 90 days. Now, I ain't saying we're 100% because I've had a couple that I personally forgot about. They're on our map, so I don't lose them. Once we get them, they get put on real time on our map. But sometimes some of those just slip by until you go back over and you find the yellow dot that it's a pending project, and then you go, oh, I forgot about that one. So that does happen, but it's not a lot of them. Drain permits. Anytime we have a utility or a contractor has to go through a county drain, they have to get a permit. Doesn't always happen, especially with utilities. They like to be very independent, but then if they don't go through get our permitting, they don't know then that we require them to be 4 foot below the flow line of that drain. And when we go in there to clean it and we hit one of their utilities, it's their baby. We don't pay for nothing. It's all on them. So permitting is very important. When we do get them, we get them out. Joel is very efficient in getting those permits out. Lake level complaints, we respond within 2 days. Again, a lot of these are very tough issues that are very hard to resolve, and usually it takes several months to get resolved. The reviewing of division of the plats, I kind of talked about that already. Legal lake levels, yeah, I talked about that already. So significant accomplishments. One thing I gotta inform you on that we had another engineer, Grant Simmons, and he replaced Angie on all the reviews of those plats when they come through. He has since taken a job with the city of Wyoming, and we have not replaced him in that position because we don't have the plats coming through. So we're not sure we're going to need that position replaced at this time. We're going to wait till after the first year and take a look at things, see where we're at. But in the meantime, some of the significant accomplishments this year, some of our bigger jobs was Troy with Mosher and Farnham. That's out on 92nd and Patterson in Caledonia Township and part of Gaines Township. That was $1.2 million project. That's wrapped up. And for the first time in my lifetime of living in Caledonia, we got the corner of Patterson and 92nd actually draining. There's no water in the ditch, and the field is dry, and the farmer's got a full crop, where half of it used to drown out, and that tile was so bad. We got about a mile and a half of new pipe put in on that one. That was a major, major project. So because we've fixed that, as other parts of Emmons drain, this all flows into a stream that was not designated as a county drain. It just received all the water, and then we created so much water downstream that we were washing out Cherry Valley. Road Commission fixed it twice. We washed it out again. Couple things. Number one, we're feeding all the water down there now. Second issue that came up is the route from Cherry Valley to the Thornapple River is plugged. No one maintains it. No one cleans it. And so we were petitioned to extend Emmons Drain to where Emmons Drain stops to the river and where the Troy Mosher stops, that ties in and goes to the river. So that is now a county drain, but now I got to get easements. That's another project. So, but when we're done with that, that project had to be totally reevaluated because of the request from the people at the public hearing. And my guess is we're going to be running well over $1 million on that project by the time we're done. Got some major work on it to make it flow well. Cedar Springs Drain, that is completed to the city of Cedar Springs. A major project, $2 million. But we have no drain pipe underneath buildings anymore. And that was what triggered that one. People wanted to add on to their buildings. I couldn't sign off on a building permit because they were on top of our county drain. Not a good scenario. So that is now complete. No buildings are on top of our drain in that city. Kilgus Drain, we have a sinkhole. This is a developing issue with the Kilgus. We have CSX Railroad that runs over our drain by Pratt Lake and Bound Township. And there's a sinkhole right next to the rail. It's about 3 foot deep, 2 foot wide. The railroad, of course, is not the most cooperative government agency to work with. With that sinkhole in there, we had to do a lot of work to dry out the pipe that goes underneath that track. And we got a camera up there, and we found a section of pipe that literally fractured. It's just crumbling, and there's a hole. So we had dirt coming through. We then went in and tried to work with them to get permitting. They don't respond. But we have a real serious safety issue. So we went through our legal process to consider this as a project. The board determined it's necessary for us to repair it. So we went in and we did a lining. It's a temporary fix until we can get new pipe in. We did a lining on this pipe where the hole is. And when the contractor went in there to clean up the pipe to put the lining in, he's seen that the pipe next to the one that the camera picked up also had a hole in it. So we have 16 foot of pipe under that track that is literally crumbling, and there's holes in the top. And the second one, he could put his hand up through that pipe, and there's an air cavern above that. There's no soil around that pipe, number one real issue. Railroad doesn't seem to take that serious. They're more concerned about proper permitting. I did put the liner on them. We sealed the pipe up. It will give the pipe some strength until spring where we can do a whole new pipe, which is not going to be cheap because we got to bore it underneath the railroad. In the meantime, they're fighting me over permit. So this is in the process. I don't know where I'm going to end up with it. We're trying to get this thing to move smoothly. But we'll have to see. But we got a real serious public safety issue here, including the road, because it's right next to Pratt Lake Road. So if that thing caves in, we're going to lose our road. We're going to lose a track, and we got 2 fiber optic lines that run next to that track. They do $1.5 million of business per hour every day of the week. And those will go along with it. They'll snap. So they do know about the cavern. I did recommend that they investigate to see how big it is and to fill it, get it filled. Nothing seems to happen. They just don't seem to see it as serious as what we do. The other big project is Gears and Gorby Intercounty Drain. That's up on 22 Mile. And we got those completed. They were expensive because the districts are small. So we're $700,000 in the scope of things. It's not the most expensive project, but when it came to assessing, it was a big hit to those people. It was tough. It was a hard one to assess, and those people are not happy with me. But the drain had to be done. We were petitioned by Newaygo County. It's intercounty with Newaygo. And it was found to have a lot of issues. So, yeah, we did the work. This is a picture of Troy Mosier, just to give you an idea how it flows, some of the work we did on that drain being done. This is the Gears Intercounty that we just did, and that's the one where we found the dinosaur bones on. That was really cool. Here's some pictures of it, some of the repair work we did, and there you can see the femur bones that we found. They're 3 foot long, pretty substantial find. I mean, they pull those things out of the ground. We knew we had something big. And then the other picture there is as they're uncovering the femur bone. Cedar Springs drain, just a little idea of what it was like for the contractor. That was very impressed with the contractor on that job because the roadway through that city is like a spider web of utilities. It's just, I mean, we were sure that we were going to have a problem getting our pipe through, but the contractor, the foreman, is very good at calculating his grades and shooting the pipe, and they just did a phenomenal job, and we went through that project with no issues at all. Key collaboration. We do a lot of that. A lot of our success is working through them with others. It really is. Some of the key projects is the Schoolie Drain. We just replaced the 76th Street culvert underneath where the Schoolie runs through by Dutton. That was a project with Kent County Road Commission. Because the drain culvert was not failing, but it was hydraulically not able to handle the amount of water that's being fed down from that drain because we cleaned them. And now we're backing up and flooding property. We had to size that one up. We worked with the road commission, and they agreed to cover 50% of the cost, and 50% then was assessed to the district. They're great to work with, and we have a lot of agreements in place that we honor with each other, and it really works very well, and everybody wins with it. And then we have 84th Street that will be closing. Well, it's supposed to close next week, but 100th Street is just being wrapped up, so as soon as that is open, then we'll be closing 84th. I expect by the second week of October, 84th to be closed. Another culvert has to be replaced. This one the road commission is paying for because it's failing, it's starting to give way. So we're going to get that replaced. And we do it through the road, through the drain office, because I have agreements with Eagle that allows us to do a lot of work on the drains within their guidelines without having to get permitting. And none of the other services can do that. So when MDOT has a project through one of our drains or County Road Commission, we usually take care of them, get them done, and they just write us a check for the cost. It works very well. Nash Creek Intercounty Drain, that's a project that's in the process. It's projected to be approximately $8 million. We have partners on that one with Trout Unlimited, Ottawa County Water Resources, the Village of Sparta, Sparta Schools, and of course Eagle is very active in this one. A lot of work has to be done on the drain itself, but also there's a environmental piece on this one that's very critical to bring back this as a trout stream. And we're pretty excited about this one. This is a project that I've been soliciting money from the state for the last year and a half. And this year, in the budget that was passed, we got a supplemental for $2 million for this project. So we're pretty excited about that. I recently have submitted the paperwork to receive the first $1 million to get this project off the ground. So not many drain commissioners get that. And when we had summer conference and that word got out, a lot of my peers weren't real happy with me because they could never get that. And so I feel honored that we were able to do that. And I don't know if I could ever pull that off again, but we'll take this one anyway. Whiskey Creek is one that is, it's a drain that runs by what I refer to as Woodland Mall and Eastbrook Mall. That's the way they started. Now they got different names. I don't keep up with that, but that is a drain that takes all the water from that part of the city. And when they put in the Eastbrook Mall, the engineer missed the grades on that, and that mall is 6 inches below floodplain. So when we have a big water event, Whiskey Creek is not going to handle that. Water is going to flow over the top, and they're going to put 6 inches of water through that whole mall. It's been verified and re-verified. My predecessor discovered that, had it verified by another engineering company. City of Kentwood reviewed it with their engineer, verified the same thing. The City of Grand Rapids verified it. This is a problem that is waiting to happen, and I can't do anything about it. The City of Grand Rapids is willing to sign a petition, but the City of Kentwood is not. And until they do, there's nothing I can do. And that is going to happen. And it's going to be front page news when that does, because the damage is going to be very extensive. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. But that's collaboration. When it doesn't work, it can be a problem. And you just keep plugging away and maybe you can change it. This is some pictures of the projects, the Schooley Drain putting in the box culvert on 76th Street. You can see the top picture, what it was. It was a good culvert, but it was just way too small. When we clean the drain, you can see the yards, what's happening to the yards when we get our spring thaws and rains. This is Sparta. This is Nash Creek project. This is a chronic problem that the village of Sparta deals with when they get flooded, because the drain just can't handle the amount of water that's going down through it. So looking ahead, we have a project in the workings right now. We're getting ready to bid it. It's called Five Lakes Dam. This is a lake level project. It was discovered kind of by accident, but there's there's an embankment that's built to hold the water back to create these 5 lakes, and that was never inspected as part of the dam structure. The dam structure's on the north end of the lake. This embankment's on the south side of the bank, and Joel was looking at reviewing some properties that the property owners working on a sale, hopefully to the county parks. And we had Eagle, and we were walking, he was walking through and checking, and the property owner says, yeah, we got water coming off from Hall Street up there, and we don't understand why that would be happening. So they went and looked at it, and that embankment was seeping water at a very large rate through the embankment that holds all the water on these lakes. So as we then had to start investigating what's happening with it, and did soil borings and found that this thing, at the rate of risk of failing, is in that rate of failing. The fact it hasn't failed is a miracle. And it's holding right now, but it's not going to make it through another winter. So this thing is on fast track. Permitting from Eagle can't keep up fast enough. So we've been, again, it goes back to collaborating and the factor of trust we've built with each other. Move forward with this thing, get it stabilized. This is what you're doing. We know what our permitting will catch up. Verbally, we're going to agree this is how it's got to be, and we'll follow up with the proper permits later. So this project's going to be done before winter, and we'll be shoring that drain up, or that dam up. Knapp's Corner, yeah, what do I say? It's getting there. We have a board meeting the 17th of October with ISD, our last step to get an easement with them. And we'll be able then, the rest of the steps we have to go through should go very smoothly. It's been a stickler, and the last month they said their board will meet and get ready to support the easement. They didn't do it, so now we're going to try again October, but they want me there. It's the first time, and the drain district attorney there. So I'm hoping that between all of us there, we'll be able to answer all their questions and get them comfortable and get this thing moving. So maybe a year from now, we can be close to wrapping up construction. Nash Creek, I talked about that, is looking ahead. We hope to have work going on that come spring. Duncan Lake Intercounty Drain is one that was just approved last week. We have a problem in Berry County. Duncan Lake is a lake in Berry County, and every time we have a 2-inch rain, this lake flash floods. It'll go up 2 foot for every inch of rain, kind of like Knapp's Pond. And then properties are flooded and docks are buried in water. And there's a number of problems, but any of the problems that we can resolve, the best we can do is to relieve that quicker, but we can't stop the flooding. It's just the way there's so much water that runs into this lake that, yeah, we'd have to dig a lake twice its size to keep it normal, and that's, just not feasible. So a couple adjustments we'll be able to make in that to make some relief, but it's not fixable. And this is probably the first project I've ever had to take on that, to look at that. There really is no real solution to this one. The people are going to have to just accept the fact their properties are going to have floods at certain times, and that's just what they're going to have to adjust to. So that one is in the process. And Emmons Lake Drain, I talked about that a little bit. That's been extended, and that's going to move forward. Along with that, along 100th Street in Caledonia by Caledonia Christian Church, if you're familiar with that area, every time we get 4-inch rainfall or bigger, that road floods. And it floods so bad that they got to close it. Well, it's flooding because the pipes are all undersized. So the people complained about it, and it's in the meeting, in the minutes, so we're going to have to address that. And that's not going to be cheap because there's a lot of underground pipe that's got to be upsized. So that will be addressed and that will be corrected. So as that continues to develop, we should be able to start managing that stormwater in a productive way. And that's about it. And I could go on, but I'll leave it at that for now, if there's any questions.
We know you're very passionate about drains, so thanks for sharing that with us today. Commissioner Kallman.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say thank you so much for all your work, and I do think it would be great to add an objective that you find mastodon bones every year.
You know, that, when we found those and I got the text, I just thought, this is going to be a really cool story for Kent County. You know, just kind of a home. We can kind of rally around it. It's pretty cool. And then all of a sudden, this thing went viral. And we had USA Today did an article last week. New York Times came out with an article. They came and interviewed us, and the contractor had pictures of them in it. And I mean, this thing has just gone crazy. I think that's good for Kent County because we're more than just a community. We're a community of history. And we have our own museum, and they're doing all the prep on it. And it was just to be there and see those bones as they pull them out of the ground. It's just kind of a cool factor.
All right, Commissioner Ponstein.
Thank you, Chair Breeby. Ken, thanks for being here. Can you back up to slide 13?
You have to tell me when to stop,
The
Stan.
Troy Mosier.
Oh, the Troy Mosier?
Right there.
Right there.
So when you've got a drain, you talk about the easement. Is the easement bank to bank, or do you go out beyond the banks as part of the easement?
The easements on these established drains, the center of the drain is where the easement starts. And so some of these drains, because they've widened so bad with the amount of water that they're taking now, like example, Nash Creek, that drain used to be 2 foot wide. We had 50-foot easements. We got a stream now 30-foot wide. And we don't got much easement left. So when we did initial cleanup, we have to go get waivers in order to access the property outside the easement, which
Okay.
makes a lot of work.
Okay, so, I mean, looking at the drain, there's a
Yeah.
lot that's going on that people don't see, that erosion from the lands on each side. It almost looks like there's a runoff stream in there. I know one of your partners on one of yours, Trout Unlimited, and I know the Conservation District are big promoters of putting trees in, because one of the biggest threats to the threats in streams and parks are the warm water and the fish habitat then.
Yep.
How do you address concerns like this? Because this one's wide open. I imagine that water gets pretty warm, and it looks like there's nothing preventing any erosion from the sides.
Well, there's straw matting there, and the vegetation cover crop will be taking hold, and that's a pretty stable drain. But thanks for bringing that up, Stan, because another thing that I've just implemented, and we will be using this on Nash Creek and Emmons, and as I work on other drains, I'll be working with farmers or any ag land that is being in production, is we've worked out a agreement that they can be a part of if they do the buffer planting to stabilize the soils along the drain. Then we've worked out a formula that we can give them a relief on their assessment with that property. So farmers will tend to be quicker to be part of that instead of forcing them. We're kind of making a reason to be part of that solution. And I'm really excited about moving that forward and getting that going. So I almost forgot about that. So Kent County is doing it. Our neighboring counties are not. So on intercounty drains, I can't talk about it at those meetings, but at our meetings I do. I bring it up. But I'll work with each farmer individually as these projects go forward and try to get those agreements in place. And those will be like 20-year agreements. And they'll be 15 foot wide, so we can run a gator down there to make sure they're still in place. That's really going to make a difference. And if a farmer already has a buffer, we will bring them in to that agreement. Even though they already have it, it's worth having them keep it there.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing is the tree thing. You're right. We did work with Calvin College and Plaster Creek stewards. And we got a grant because the schoolie drain is in that watershed of Plaster Creek. And they got a grant. We bought 220 trees and we planted them along the schoolie where there was no trees and it's real low land. So we got a lot of invasive grasses that keep filling in that drain. So when we get the shade over it, those invasive grasses die off. So we planted all these trees and we had 100% survival the first year. Now this summer I see a few of them died off. It got a little too dry, but those I can't use I can't assess for those for planting trees because the law looks at that as saying you're paying for someone's landscaping. But working with Plaster Creek stewards, we were able to get grant money that I could do that and volunteer help from Kelvin. It was all done through volunteer and that project is being studied and recorded as time goes on, and when we can get some good data to reinforce our theory that this does work and there is value outside of even the fish life, I'm going to go to Lansing and try to get some changes to the drain code on that so we can use the money under certain circumstances to put trees in.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, thank you for your passion on that. I mean, we live in a state that's abundant with water.
Yep.
Clean water is important for multiple factors, and we are blessed with so many partners like Plaster Creek, Trout Unlimited, the conservation districts, all working towards the same goal. So I appreciate your cooperation with other groups, so thank you.
And we do work with them as well on like the Coldwater Stream and Tyler Creek. Those are trout streams. And we have a lot of clearing going on those right now because there's a lot of dead trees that have fallen in. And we hire them people specifically because they go through, they understand fish habitat and they know what to clear and what not to clear. And we've been doing that in the past and the outcome's just been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. So they keep the trout stream status and we get a clean stream to handle the water flow. So it's a great partnership.
All right, any other questions for Commissioner Yunker? Commissioner Hennessy.
I do appreciate your great interest in this subject and the way in which you've really delved into the whole issue of water control. And I hear, as you describe the projects and listen to Commissioner Ponstein, that, you know, the water quality and improving water quality through the projects you work on. And I've also heard you speak indirectly today and directly that you'll go to Lansing to get changes to the drain code. And we have a legislative agenda that we work on every year. And I'm wondering if you have a list that you can be adding, you know, list of changes that we could be adding to our legislative priorities and perhaps to our Michigan Association of Counties priorities.
I usually communicate those with Al, and then he brings those forward. We have a strong lobby firm connection in Lansing as well as drain commissioners, so we do a lot from that end. But with the tree piece, that's more Kent County, that's more me going that way. Until I have the data that will speak what we need and why we need, I have to be patient at this point. But we're working toward it, and when that comes, yeah, then I definitely will want partnership to help us move this forward.
Okay. Well, you also mentioned with the condos and the way
Oh,
subdivisions are going in, that's another one that I think would be difficult, but there might be ways in which we can help to improve that situation because it's all about, I mean, homeowners will end up in trouble and it does affect water quality in the end.
It does. And the homeowners don't have a clue. They don't. When they go into these setups, they all of a sudden get these, oh man, now we got the road, we'll call the road commission. Oh no, you got to pay it. It's your baby. And they had no idea. So on top of their big mortgage, now they got to ante up their money to fix their road or clean their storm sewers. And I don't know how we went down that road as a state. I don't know the history on it, but I just don't see a good outcome in the near future with that, because that's all they're doing now. Developers are trying to get away from the red tape, and that's what's happening. And these drains aren't being cleaned. The only thing I have real authority on is I watch the ponds, and those ponds feed into our drain. And so we watch for what the outfalls are on those ponds. And if we find them that are badly eroded and they're dumping a lot of sediment down over, then I have authority to go in there and have that fixed. But that's about the best I can do with that.
All right, are there any other questions or comments for Commissioner Yunker? I do not see any further ones. We have a couple other meetings following this one today, so I would encourage you to attend the airport meeting coming up next. But thanks for joining us today, Commissioner Yunker. That brings us to Commissioner Miscellaneous. Is there any Commissioner Miscellaneous? I mentioned the airport meeting. I think that's going to be in 311 following this. Nothing? All right, so I move to adjourn. Our next meeting date will be October 11, 2022 at 8:30 a.m. So thanks for joining us today.